She knows she should leave. She's known for months. But every time she reaches for the door, something pulls her back. That something isn't love. It isn't loyalty. It isn't even hope. It's chemistry. And your brain can't tell the difference. Every year, millions of people stay in relationships that are slowly destroying them. Not because they're weak, not because they're foolish, but because their brains have been hijacked by one of the most powerful psychological mechanisms ever studied. This is the story of trauma bonding, how it works, why it's so hard to escape, and the one thing neuroscience has revealed that changes everything. It always starts beautifully. The attention is overwhelming. The compliments feel endless. They text you constantly. They remember every detail. They make you feel like the only person in the world. Psychologists call this love bombing, and it's not romance. It's strategy. During this phase, your brain is being flooded with oxytocin and dopamine, the same neurochemicals released during sex, breastfeeding, and cocaine use. You aren't falling in love. You're being chemically primed for attachment. Dopamine doesn't just make you feel good. It makes you remember what made you feel good. It creates a prediction model in your brain. This person equals pleasure. And once that wiring is in place, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to override. Then the shift happens. It might be sudden or slow. The warmth disappears. The affection becomes conditional. Criticism replaces compliments. Silence replaces conversation. And you start to wonder, what did I do wrong? This is the critical moment. In a healthy relationship, withdrawal of affection feels painful but manageable. In a trauma bond, it feels like dying. Because to your brain, it is. The dopamine supply has been cut off, and your reward system is screaming for another hit. Psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something disturbing in the 1950s. When you reward a behavior unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, with no clear pattern, the subject doesn't lose interest. They become obsessed. Skinner was studying pigeons, but the principle works just as powerfully on people. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the engine of every casino, every addictive app, and every trauma bond. When the abuser occasionally returns to warmth, a compliment, an apology, a night that feels like the beginning again, your brain doesn't just feel relief, it feels euphoria. Because the dopamine hit after deprivation is amplified. The contrast between pain and pleasure makes the pleasure feel transcendent. You're not staying because of the good times. You're staying because the bad times make the good times feel like salvation. And the cycle tightens. The good phases get shorter, the bad phases get longer, but the bond doesn't weaken, it strengthens. Because that's what intermittent reinforcement does. The less predictable the reward, the harder you try to get it. By this point, she isn't choosing to stay. She's addicted. And like any addiction, the first step toward freedom isn't willpower. It's understanding what the substance actually is. To understand trauma bonding, you need to understand 3 chemicals. The first is cortisol, your stress hormone. In a trauma bond, cortisol levels are chronically elevated. Your body lives in a state of low-grade emergency. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, is constantly activated, scanning for threat. You become hypervigilant. You learn to read every micro-expression, every shift in tone, every silence. Not because you're perceptive, because you're terrified. Chronic cortisol exposure physically damages the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and context. This is why trauma-bonded people often can't clearly remember the timeline of their abuse or struggle to explain why they stayed. Their memory architecture has been compromised. The second chemical is dopamine. We've already seen how intermittent reinforcement supercharges it. But here's what most people don't know. Dopamine isn't actually the pleasure chemical. It's the wanting chemical. It doesn't make you feel good. It makes you feel need. In a trauma bond, Your dopamine system isn't responding to the person anymore. It's responding to the unpredictability. Your brain is chasing the pattern, trying to solve the equation. And the equation has no solution. That's what makes it addictive. Researcher Helen Fisher scanned the brains of people in love and found that romantic attachment activates the same neural pathways as cocaine addiction. But here's the critical finding. In adversity-laden relationships, relationships with conflict, instability, and intermittent reward, the activation was even stronger. The turbulence didn't weaken the bond, it intensified it. The third chemical is oxytocin, the bonding hormone, released during physical touch, intimacy, and eye contact. In a trauma bond, the reconciliation phases trigger massive oxytocin surges. After a fight, after the silent treatment, after the cruelty, when the abuser finally holds you again, your brain releases oxytocin at levels normally reserved for childbirth. The bond that forms isn't just emotional, it's biological. It's written into your nervous system. So now you have the full picture. Cortisol keeps you in a state of fear. Dopamine makes you crave the next unpredictable reward. And oxytocin bonds you to the source of your pain as if it were the source of your survival. 3 systems, evolved over millions of years to keep us alive and connected, weaponized against you. But there's a layer beneath the chemistry. For many people, the template for trauma bonding was written long before adulthood. If you grew up with a caregiver who was unpredictable, loving one moment, cold or frightening the next, your brain learned a devastating lesson early. Love is something you have to earn. Affection is conditional, and the people who hurt you are the same people you need to survive. That's not a belief. It's a neural pathway, and it's been reinforcing itself your entire life. Attachment researchers call this an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. People who carry it don't just tolerate inconsistency in partners, they're drawn to it. Because inconsistency is what their nervous system recognizes as love. The chaos feels like home. And this is why telling someone in a trauma bond to just leave is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk. The injury is real, the mechanism is biological, and the repair requires something very specific. The neuroscience of trauma bonding reveals something that sounds counterintuitive but is deeply, radically hopeful. If a bond can be wired, it can be unwired. The key is a concept called earned, secure attachment. Your original attachment wiring isn't your destiny. Through consistent, safe relationships, with a therapist, a support group, or a trusted friend, your brain can build new pathways that compete with and eventually override the old ones. You can't delete the original template, but you can write a new one over it. Neuroplasticity research shows that consistent emotional safety, the experience of being seen without judgment, heard without interruption, and valued without performance, physically reshapes the brain over time. New synaptic connections form, the amygdala calms, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, and the desperate, consuming need for the abuser's approval begins to quiet. Not overnight, but measurably, reliably, biologically. Recovery from a trauma bond isn't a single moment of courage. It's 1,000 small moments of choosing yourself when every cell in your body is screaming to go back. It's boring, it's unglamorous, and it is the bravest thing a human being can do. If any of this sounds familiar, if you recognize the cycle, the chemistry, the pull, know this: you are not broken. You are not weak. You are having a completely normal neurobiological response to an abnormal situation. And the fact that you're still here, listening to this, means some part of you already knows what you need to do. Your brain was wired for connection. That's not the problem. The problem was who you were connected to. And the most important bond you will ever form is the one with yourself. If this video changed how you think about relationships, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to understand the psychology behind why we fall for the wrong people, watch this one next.